Hello, welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Hannah, and we are actually going to be talking about movies today. So this lump under the blanket here is Ori, actually. He's been there for like 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm just gonna let him chill, let him do his thing. So it's been quite a while since I've done one of these videos. I used to post one of these pretty much every time I had watched 4 new movies, but I haven't posted anything since before October. So obviously trying to remember stuff from then is a little bit difficult. So I definitely have notes that I'm going to be using. But all these movies are ones that I watched in October. So 3 out of 4 of them are horror, and I guess you could even argue that all of them are horror, but I definitely don't see it that way. So let's get started. The first movie I watched, I actually didn't recognize by the title. I had to read the description to remember anything about this movie, and that's No One Gets Out of I'm already messing up words. No One Gets Out Alive, which is directed by Santiago Mangini. This came out last year, 2021. It is a mystery thriller horror. I watched this on Netflix, and I gave this 3 stars. An immigrant in search of the American dream is forced to take a room in a boarding house and soon finds herself in a nightmare from which she cannot escape. So I keep track of all the movies I watch on Letterboxd, and I actually rated this higher than most people on there. It has an average of 2.5 stars. So apparently most people just pretty much straight up don't like this movie. It's a pretty fast-paced movie, and it has a wonderful atmosphere. However, it makes that mistake that most monster movies do, where it just shows way too much at the end, and it kind of just takes you out of the story, and you're like, what? But in this case, it actually ended up feeling really goofy, so that was the main disappointment for me. The ghosts were actually my favorite aspect of this movie. Their design was actually pretty spooky and creepy, and how they interacted with the living in the house was just more original than what we usually see when ghosts are involved. This is also one of those where you kind of wish more things were explained, as there's quite a few things that are left open-ended and open to like an interpretation. So this is definitely a bit of an oddball movie, but I honestly don't think it's as bad as a lot of the reviews make it seem. It's atmospheric, it has some pretty good moments, and it's mainly, like for me, just the ending where it just goes into like just this strange territory of just showing way too much. Next was a movie I saw in the theater, and I honestly had no expectations for this, and that is Venom, Let There Be Carnage, directed by Andy Serkis, who did not direct the first one, by the way. This came out as last year as well, 2021. This is a sci-fi action-adventure, and I gave this 2.5 stars. After finding a host body in investigative reporter Eddie Brock, the alien symbiote must face a new enemy, Carnage, the alter ego of serial killer Cletus Cassidy. So this movie was 100% exactly what I was expecting, which was mediocre. The whole flow of this movie was just straight up bizarre. Like, I don't know what the hell happened in editing, but it just did not make sense, and like the cuts between the scenes just felt so abrupt and poorly spliced. It honestly just felt like an unfinished movie. The dialogue was also very, very freaking awkward and cringy. It did get better when it just mainly focused on like Venom and Eddie. However, every other actor like around them was just acting so badly. And that's just so strange, because like the CGI aspect of the movie should not be the best part. For a movie where the sub-tagline is like, let there be carnage, or subtitle, whatever you call that, there is not a lot of carnage in this. The whole Carnage villain was more of like a secondary plot, and we really should have seen a lot more of him, but there was just so much like dark and shaky cam that it was hard to even get like good shots of him. And that whole storyline just ended up being incredibly disappointing. The after credit scene is by far the best part of this movie, which is quite sad, but I mean, it's a Marvel movie, so that's kind of one of their most well-known aspects of the movies. And overall here, like the Eddie Venom dynamic is fun. It's definitely the best part of this series, but it just really couldn't save this movie. Like, it was pretty bad, and I'm kind of surprised I gave it 2.5 stars, to be honest. Next was a movie I've always been interested in, but finally sat down to watch, and that is Children of the Corn, directed by Fritz Kirsch. This came out in 1984. It is a thriller horror, And I also gave this 2.5 stars. And thinking about it, I cannot imagine having Children of the Corn being on par with Venom, so I don't know, I might need to edit these ratings or something. A boy preacher named Isaac goes to a town in Nebraska called Gatlin and gets all the children to murder every adult in town. So this movie really isn't scary at all. Like, if you're really not into horror movies usually, this is probably a pretty good intro one actually. But it is 100% entertaining. You can definitely tell it's an 80s movie as you watch this. But the soundtrack of this, like just that over dramatic horror soundtrack of the 80s is so amazing and 100% makes this movie. The acting and dialogue are terrible, just like in Venom. But here, it is a level of ridiculousness that is just really fun. I do wish we had more background on what's actually happening in the corn, as that's pretty glossed over here. This is also a good, like, background noise kind of movie, as it does get dull, but there are some unexpectedly funny moments. And obviously the main character, like Isaac, the little preacher boy, like, he both looks really young and really old at the same time. It could definitely be on that subreddit 13 or 30. Finally, in October, I watched The Wailing, which is directed by Na Han Jin. This came out in 2016, is a mystery horror, and is the best one on this list with 4.5 stars. A stranger arrives in a little village, and soon after, a mysterious sickness starts spreading. A policeman is drawn into the incident and is forced to solve the mystery in order to save his daughter. So this is a Korean movie that is quite well known, and it's also known for being long. However, don't let the runtime like scare you. It's 156 minutes or 2 hours and 36 minutes, which is very long for a horror movie. However, my husband and I were both like completely absorbed in this movie, wanting to know what was going to happen next, trying to solve the mystery along with the main character. And this movie did keep us both guessing until the very end. So that was very well done aspect. Another thing I really love about this movie is the reactions of the people, of the characters and everything felt very realistic. Like, that's one thing that can potentially take you out of a movie, is people just reacting in ways where it's just like, no one would ever do that. Like, that's so not true. Like, who would do that kind of thing? And that's not the case in this movie. So in the end, this was one that I was very happy with, and I was glad that I finally took the time to watch it. And that's all. I'm definitely going to be trying making more of these videos so that I can kind of like catch up on everything I've watched. But I haven't been watching many movies lately, actually. I feel like it's because it's the beginning of the year, and so it's not like a big blockbuster season kind of deal. I also just have been more in the mood to read than watch movies, actually. But it would be nice to be able to talk about movies that I've actually watched this year instead of last year. So definitely going to try and catch up on that. But thank you for hanging out with me. It is always appreciated. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.